Welcome back to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We tell the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. We are proudly produced by Charitable Communications. I'm Bobby Keys.
And I'm Ruth Bombigas. And we are staying safe, but we continue our journey talking with nonprofits.
Yes.
And
stories must be told.
Stories must be told, and I always like to share that we're kind of the intersection of the profit and the nonprofit community, because nonprofits couldn't do it without the help of our profit partners and friends. We have a great guest, Mr. Mike Meyer, who is volunteer extraordinaire. He's wearing his hat today partially with the organization called Feed the Children. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Ruth. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm glad we have moments of your time, because you are a moving target person.
Well, I try to keep moving every day.
Well, you are busy, though, helping other folks. So, Mike, pull us in a little bit with what your volunteer involvements are, and then we'll slide into what you're doing now, which is amazing.
Well, Ruth, I got started in nonprofits in 1994 when I volunteered to go on a medical airlift with Heart to Heart to Vietnam. I'm a Vietnam vet. I'm from Kansas City here, so I understand who Heart to Heart was. And I had retired early. I was a commodities trader for 15 years and actually retired when I was 43 and decided to donate my time and efforts and resources into the Kansas City community. So I really got started with Heart to Heart and ended up being on the senior group that went over to Vietnam to negotiate the landing rights for the airlift, which took place in April of 95. So that really got me on the road to nonprofits. And through that airlift, I was able to use some of my friends and contacts in the corporate world. And one of my dear friends, who was my son's advisor at Wentworth Military School, happened to be the best friend of Fred Smith of FedEx. They had gone through officer training together in the Marine Corps, served together in Vietnam on 2 tours. And that's how I really got into the heavy work with corporations, doing work on the nonprofit side. And Fred donated a jumbo jet, an MD-11 on that airlift. And I went back and started my own nonprofit in Vietnam and brought medicine and equipment for 6 years in and out of Vietnam. And also on that particular first airlift, that was the first one that FedEx had ever done with Heart to Heart. And from that airlift, they've been together ever since. And they've donated millions and billions of dollars in services to Heart to Heart. So I'm very proud of being able to say that I gave somebody a lift, you might say. I had named my nonprofit Uplift International in working with Vietnam, and I worked directly for the Prime Minister of Vietnam. And then Fred Smith was my partner in all of that. And so that led me 5 years later, I ended up being the director of development for the VFW's National Foundation here in Kansas City. And 6 months after the job, they asked me to become the executive director in April of 2001. And then, of course, 9/11 happened. And then so that accelerated my involvement with nonprofits because of the ability to bring in corporations to support our troops and our wounded. So with the help of Hallmark Cards, where my wife worked for 25 years, was a large donor, but we had FedEx and Walmart Foundation. The three of those ended up donating to me over $35 million in goods and services. So I did that for 5 years as the director, and then helped form a group called the Coalition to Salute Heroes, which raised money directly for our seriously wounded troops. And I did that for 10 years, and then left in 2015 to start working more with Rotary, because I became a Rotarian here in Overland Park. So a lot of the programs I created for the military was done with Feed the Children. And they supplied me with food, bottled water, and books for the children of the military. And through the Disney Corporation gave us the books. And so through that, James Patterson also was a big donor of his books to the military. So we created programs. I did that for about 6 years. And we ended up giving about $10 million worth of products to our military in that time period. So I've been able to use Feed the Children, that relationship, to bring that to Kansas City. And through the Rotary of Oakland Park, we have delivered $3.5 million worth of brand new children's books and supplies, such as diapers. We've brought in 250,000 diapers in the last 30 days. And we've just been hitting the ground running. I mean, because of this situation, it's easy to pick up the phone and bring those resources to Kansas City through those old successful relationships. So working with now on the board of Johnson County Christmas Bureau, I've been there now for about 3 years. And my Rotarian brother, Larry Biggis, brought me into that situation, and it's been very rewarding because I've been able to bring supplies currently through a lot of donations of soap, all kinds of personal care products, and we're doing that now for Kansas City as I speak. So we brought in, let's see, in the last month we brought in 120,000 pounds of soap and delivered that to Giving the Basics, because that's our partner now because of the ability for their system in both in the inner city and the surrounding areas. They're very well organized and efficient, and they've donated warehouse space to the Rotary Foundation. So we've been able to fill those warehouse spaces, and that's where I'm currently at speaking right now. We just brought in about 20,000 pounds of soap into Kansas City, which will be delivered over the next week. And then in 1 hour, we have a semi coming in from Oklahoma City that has bottled water, diapers, food, snacks for the kids, you name it. We've got it on that trailer. And so this is all donated. The only thing we pay for is transportation. Everything else is donated through those agencies. And I'm just proud to be able to do it because Kansas City's my home. I love Kansas City. There's nothing I wouldn't do for it. And that's where we are right now.
Well, first of all, thank you for your service in the military. And second, I think you've just proven that networking and friends pay off in many, many, many ways. We'll be joined later in the show by Teresa Hamilton of Giving the Basics and hearing what they're doing. But you make it sound so easy. It's not that easy. Bobby and I both know, working in the sector, getting people to say yes, and I will give when there's so many demands. So maybe you can share with us and enlighten those who are out there doing lots of asking how you get after. What are the best ways to do that?
Well, it's simpler than you think. You remember I started the discussion that I had volunteered to be on a committee. That is the most important step that anybody can take, is to volunteer their time and efforts. And what you find is that the same type of people are on the committee. When I joined that committee, we had the vice president of Marion Labs was on our committee, who turned out to be a Vietnam vet. And he and I formed a relationship that's a brotherhood through that committee. And I recently spoke at I gave his eulogy when he passed this year. That's how close that relationship started back when I volunteered to be on a committee. Once you do that, it opens up so many doors in relationships that you end up figuring out through those relationships how you can help. I will guarantee you that the more you give of your time and your efforts, the rewards will be 10 times more coming back to you. I mean, a good example is that when I was working with the military, I got a call from the White House. I had friends working there because I'd worked after 9/11 and at the Pentagon back and forth, representing the VFW. And a guy called me one day and he said, "Hey, Mike, I need your help. I got a movie star that we can't help, but you can." And that turned out to be Gary Sinise called me.
Oh, my.
He called me on March 15th, 2004, and he wanted to start Operation Iraqi Children. So this is an example of being on a committee, working on a project, and all of a sudden people start calling you. You don't start calling them. And when Gary called me, within 2 weeks, he was in Kansas City, and we initiated Operation Iraqi Children, headquartered here in Kansas City. And I brought Mary Eisenhower in from People to People because I was happened to be on another committee with her, and then I ended up being a trustee. And then we shipped, in 5 years, 425,000 school kits to the children of Iraq and Afghanistan through our military, through civil affairs. And we were receiving letters back from the troops in the field saying that the children now were working to support the troops and actually identifying for them buried IEDs. Now, who would have ever thought that one phone call from Gary Sinise would end up saving lives in Iraq for our troops? And I use that as an example strictly for the fact that when you're on a committee and people start asking you for your advice or your assistance, pretty soon they see how you operate and they trust you. So they build a bond. I did the same thing with the Walmart Foundation. I did it with Hallmark. Every corporation, Fred Smith got to the point where he would call me, checking in, because he gave me $1 million a year in free shipping to the troops. And it was a blank check. I just ended up using $1 million a year. But that is an example of being on one single committee started this whole process for me. So I advise people to volunteer for success. And that's going to be the name of my book when I write it, when I have the time.
So I got a quick question. So that's the secret. So it seems like the secret sauce. You have people that give you money, which is what a lot of people need, and you know, volunteering. You have that experience. But when you go and approach these major corporations, like, do you have this huge, beautiful proposal, or is it just a human-to-human connection? Like, what? There's got to be, there's something in there that you're able to connect on a different level.
Well, I learned what the sauce was. I learned it early when I was serving Vietnam. I was a crew chief door gunner on a helicopter my entire time in Vietnam in 1970 through 71. And I saw things that most people will never see in their life. But I was given a gift, and that gift was I made it out alive. And so I appreciate life. And so that appreciation turned into figuring out how to gain a person's respect, and the key is to get to the heart. The wallet follows the heart, is my old saying. And the reason for that is when people see that you're genuine, you follow through with what you say you're going to do. There's never been a project that I've worked on that wasn't successful because we didn't oversell, but what we promised we delivered on. And when somebody like Fred Smith calls you and says, "What's your next idea?" And I had that happen with Walmart Foundation. They actually would call me for new ideas because I understood the military, and they didn't, but they were getting pressure from the public saying, "What is Walmart doing for the troops?" And once I figured out how to understand their philosophy and what they wanted to accomplish, I never told them what they should do. They asked me what they should do. Then I told them afterwards. So I'd let them tell me what their needs are, and then I solve their problem. And that's very important, is to listen to the person you're trying to bring on as a supporter or as a client. You must listen to their needs and then find a solution to that problem. And that's what we did with Walmart. I probably did 15 projects with the Walmart Foundation, and it got to the point where they would call me and I gave them a rule when we first started working together, and that's something that I want all the listeners to realize, is that you must have a way to operate that they respect. And what I told Walmart was, if the project wasn't efficient or effective, don't do it. Because they were getting calls from all over the world wanting them to do something. So what we did was we set up an evaluation, sort of like a checklist, check the boxes. And I set that up for them. And once we started doing that, that filtered out all of the bad things that people were coming up with, ideas, and the results into something that they could actually do and feel comfortable doing. And that's why they gave me millions of dollars. They used to give me $2 million every quarter because we created phone cards for the troops to call home. And believe it or not, most people don't realize this. One of my partners in that was a man named Arlie Ermey, who everybody knows on Mail Call, and was the DI that was killed in the movie Full Metal Jacket. The guy that got shot in the bathroom by the troops. And that gentleman grew up in Edwardsville, Kansas, and was born in Emporia. And so he had a place in his heart for the troops and Kansas City. So it was very easy to work with Arlie to affect our troops. And he was one of the most patriotic men next to Gary Sinise that I've ever met in my life.
Mike, you are amazing in everything that you have been able to do, and for sharing all of this and your wisdom and knowledge. We're so grateful for all that you're doing in and around the community and everywhere. And thanks for giving us a little time on your busy dance card.
Well, I just want to say to everybody that's out there that what you're doing right now is extremely important, because when I was in positions of authority, people would call and say, what can I do? How can I help? Especially after 9/11. And so for your listeners out there, they should remember that if they can solve somebody's problem or contribute to a solution, that's the main thing they need to do, no matter how small it is or how large it is. As long as you're doing it, it will grow. And I think that's how I got to where I am today.
Go and check out feedthechildren.org. Thank you very much, Mike. What wonderful, wonderful things you're doing for the community. KC Cares.
COVID-19 is a severe lung infection. Trust the American Lung Association for science-based public health information, especially for the 36 million Americans who live with lung disease. We have resources to protect your lung health, access expertise from medical professionals, and peer-to-peer support through our online communities. Visit lung.org for daily updates or call 1-800-LUNG-USA.
Inspired by Ewan Marion Kaufman, the Kaufman Foundation believes that every person, regardless of their background, should have the opportunity to learn, to take risks, and to own their success. Working together with our Kansas City community and beyond, we take on approaches that break down barriers, providing people with the necessary skills throughout life to make or take a job, and ultimately give back to their community. By listening to the communities we serve, tap into our learnings and relationships, and bring everyone together to build and support programs that improve education, boost entrepreneurship, and help Kansas City thrive. Learn more at Kaufman.org.